How to teach the Rocket Math word problems curriculum. Rocket Math has a unique and sophisticated approach to solving word problems. Please see the presentation on understanding Rocket Math word problems to fully appreciate our approach. This presentation will cover the basics of how to teach our curriculum. We'll cover the use of our teaching scripts and our answer keys. We'll explain why they are critical both for teaching and for the correcting procedures we recommend. We'll explain how students learn to follow explicit steps and how we gradually reduce scaffolding until students are independent. We'll explain the standard student packet as well as how and when to use the optional pages. If you follow the suggestions in this presentation carefully, your students will all successfully master these unique strategies for solving word problems. Teaching scripts are provided. The scripts will help you gradually reduce your scaffolding through 4 distinct levels: demo, lead, next, and test, which we will explain later. There are scripts for tutoring as well as scripts for teaching a whole class. The biggest difference between tutoring and whole class is that when you are teaching a whole class, you must avoid the temptation to accept answers from volunteers, those kids wildly waving their hands, or even worse, to let the eager students call out the answers. Listening to the volunteers will make you think everyone has learned the material when maybe only a few have. To accurately assess class understanding, it is critical not to allow call-outs and instead to call randomly on your students, eventually calling on everyone. You are searching to see if there are any students who aren't keeping up with the presentation or who don't understand. We use the acronym CRISTA, which stands for Choose Random Student to Answer on all key questions. If you use a system to do that, you can ensure that all students are learning the procedures. Teaching scripts require rehearsal. Take it from us. We've learned the hard way. It takes some rehearsal time to be able to teach successfully from a script. If you try reading the script for the first time, cold, in front of the students, you won't be able to deliver it smoothly or with the right emphasis. The students won't be able to understand what you're saying. So do practice the scripts ahead of time. The scripts are generic and do not include the specific answers for each problem, so you will need to have the answer key for the worksheet you're teaching close to hand. Also, note that the scripts tell you places to check students, and that means to stop and look at a handful of students' papers to see if they are all getting it right. Hint 1. If you put your low performers close to you, it is easy to check their papers. Then if they have it right, probably the rest do. Hint 2. Arrange seating in your room so that you can stand next to every student and see their answers while you are teaching. You can catch misunderstanding much more quickly that way. Teach for 10 minutes a day. It is much better to work on learning these word problem strategies for 10 minutes every day than to do longer sessions less frequently. 10 minutes is long enough in one day, even if you don't finish the worksheet. There are 3 to 5 problems on a worksheet, and the script, especially at the first 2 levels of scaffolding, demo, and lead, is pretty extensive. You want to work carefully and not skip any steps or any of the wording. You really don't want to rush or leave anyone behind. Nothing wrong with doing a part of the worksheet one day and finishing it and correcting the worksheet the second day. As long as students master the material in the beginning, things will start to move faster in the later units. Answer keys are critical. While you are teaching, you need the answer key close at hand so you know if students are answering your questions correctly. The scripts are generic for the level of scaffolding and do not include the answers, so you need the answer keys. The answer keys show exactly what students should have written on their papers. This includes underlining key information in the problem, writing labels under the blanks, putting the question mark above the right blank, putting the right numbers above the right blanks, choosing the arithmetic problem as well as finding the answer and labeling it. While students are working before the test, you want to make sure they work without errors. If you see errors, you have to stop everyone and correct those errors. Scoring guide for the word problems. Learning to set up these problems correctly is just as, or possibly more important than the correct answer. Therefore, it is critical to grade their work based on all of the parts of setting up the problem. Each problem is worth up to 10 points if everything is correct. So underlining the correct information in the problem is worth 1 point. Putting the correct labels under the 3 blanks are worth 1 point for each blank. Putting the correct numbers above the blanks are worth 1 point for each. Putting the question mark above the correct blank is worth 1 point. The correct arithmetic problem with the correct answer is worth another point. The correct answer is worth 1 point, and the correct label is worth 1 point. Have students correct their own work. Having students correct their own papers may not be standard practice for you, but it is the best way for students to learn from their mistakes. To do this effectively, you need to first require them to work in pencil. Then when it's time to correct, students put their pencils away, out of reach, and have only red pens available for correcting. This will make it less tempting for them to try to erase and hide their errors. You probably will need to explain to them that the best way to get smart is to mark and catch your own errors, to circle them and learn from them for next time. You should project the answer keys at the front of the room. For each of the 10 parts, they either give themselves a +1 or they circle the error. Later, have them use a blue pen to correct their errors so you can see that they now know the correct answer. You can see the example here. Of course, you'll need to check these over yourself before putting in the grades, but it is a great learning opportunity for students to correct their own errors. How to explain each problem type. Some folks feel that students should be able to explain their own processes in solving problems. Since this is a systematic way of solving word problems, we can explain our thinking easily. At the bottom of the first 3 worksheets in each unit are explanations of the method of solving that type of problem, the first problem on the page. If you would like students to be able to explain the process, these provide an excellent template that students could learn. Box with the steps to follow. The goal of this curriculum is for students to develop a systematic way of solving word problems. Rather than going at these problems in a haphazard or intuitive way, we want students to follow the same steps in the same order each time. For the first 5 worksheets of each unit, we display the steps in the upper right corner of the worksheet for students to see, and we want to insist that they follow them. If students follow the same steps for each problem on each worksheet in a whole unit, by the end of the unit in worksheet 6, they should have internalized the steps and be able to work systematically without referring to the steps. That's why the steps are removed from worksheet 6. All the sets of steps in the various units, while slightly different, do follow a pattern, and by the final unit they can solve all 5 types of problems with one set of unified steps. The 6 worksheets of each unit systematically reduce scaffolding. The first 3 worksheets in each unit have a problem that demos the procedure, then 2 problems where you lead the students step by step. By worksheet 4, there are problems where you ask them what comes next, and finally a problem where you test them. You can see we are gradually reducing the scaffolding as we work through the unit. As we said, there are 4 levels of scaffolding. The answer key specifies the level of scaffolding and tells which script should be used for each problem in each worksheet. Problems that are labeled demo are partially completed. The script points out to the student how the problem was set up and how to finish solving it. Problems labeled lead have the student read each step and prompts them to do it, and then the teacher checks step by step as they go. This is going to be error-free learning, where no one goes on until everyone has it correct. Problems labeled next have a script where the teacher asks the student what's next, and the student must say what the next step is, referring to the box of steps if needed. And then they say that if they say the correct step, then they go on to do the step without being prompted. This is the level where the teacher finds out if the students can follow the steps with only the box of steps to keep them on track. The final level for scaffolding is for problems labeled test, where the teacher asks the students to work independently. Then the teacher checks to see if they were successful, and if not, reteaches or uses the optional worksheets to provide more practice. So there's a different teaching script for each level of scaffolding. There are scripts for demo, for lead, for next, and for test. The script gives you the appropriate wording for each level of scaffolding. Following the scripts will cause you to systematically reduce your scaffolding so you can see if students are mastering the procedures. You have to refer to the answer key to know which script to use for each problem in a worksheet. The standard student packet with no optional pages. This packet is available to print out all at once for each unit. It consists of the 6 worksheets in Test 1. This is all that's required for students who are successful at each level of success scaffolding on each worksheet. However, there are 6 additional optional pages for those who need more practice. You can print those out separately if they're needed. How do you know who would need these optional practice pages? Is the question you should be asking yourself. The optional pages. So how do you know if they're needed? Worksheets 4, 5, and 6 end with 1 or more test items where you don't help the students. Then you correct the worksheet with the students. If more than a handful of students miss something on the test item or items, then you need to do the first optional practice page. At the end of that worksheet is another test item. Again, after correcting, if you see more than a handful of students missing the test item, then the next day do the next optional page. There are 2 optional practice pages after worksheets 4, 5, and 6 for a total of 6 extra practice pages. On the other hand, if you have just a handful of students who miss the test items on worksheets 4, 5, or 6, pull them into a small group and do the optional page or pages only with them, while the rest of the class works on something else. Mastery is expected. With all of these details of how to teach these word problem strategies, we expect that students will master them. Remember, it is critical to use the teaching scripts carefully, being sure to call on random students to answer rather than volunteers, and to check student work as you go. Make sure the students read and follow the steps and solve problems in the order we're teaching. The scripts ensure that you follow the level of scaffolding as they decrease, and students will gradually come to solve the problems on their own. Be sure to correct with the students and to check to fix any errors that crop up. If students need extra practice, use the optional pages. If you do all these things, students will master these word problem solving techniques.